Okay, hello. Um, yes, today's Friday, June 10th. I'm going to make a brief video. I want to do several things here. I'm going to share two images. Both of these images are on the scroll, but I have created a new module window for this. Um, um, One thing we're talking about here is examining and writing about or describing multimodal sources for research, right? Because we will be doing multimodal sources. By multimodal, I simply mean images, video, audio, right? Usually electronically attached to a text, right? So, it's a way of incorporating images and audio and video into your writing, right? And also using that, and in a way, it's a kind of writing itself, right? And we will talk about that some more. But the other thing is, these are both images that are about they're illustrations of the time period of Descartes, the 30 Years' War, the chaos in Northern Europe, of the religious wars, 1618 to 1648, the war between Catholicism and Protestantism, and just the, you know, chaos, the violence, rape, hanging, torture, murder, poverty. There's also, plague is happening there. The plague came every 10, 20 years, right, and wiped people out. This would have been the bubonic plague, which was a bacteria plague, right, that lasted for hundreds of years. It just came and came, and then it went and went, and it came. It just came in waves. Um, and on the one hand, it is the backdrop of the social conditions that sort of stimulated Descartes to try to find a new foundation, or forced him to look for a new foundation. We could simplify this by saying that he replaced God of the church, of the Catholic Church, as the foundation, and he got rid of that and said that maybe God's evil, right? Look at all this evil in the world, right? How do I know that it's real? What is real? Remember his meditation one, right? What do I know for sure? Um, Everything could be an illusion, right? These violent images could be an illusion, right? And so what must be real is my consciousness, even if what I'm conscious of is not really true, right? So even if I'm hallucinating something, that my existence must come before anything else, right? So even you notice that theologically, what happens here is that um, the existence of God then becomes subject to my existence, right? So instead of God creating me, in a way, my consciousness must exist before God can be in my consciousness, right? So you see, that's quite radical, actually, right? And so the idea of personal consciousness, or the personal subjectivity, right, which we call modern subjectivity, right, that whatever we say is true must be sort of filtered through my existence, right, and my consciousness. That really starts with Descartes, right? We also see that this is, so this is the origin of modern science. It's also the origin of capitalism, the move from feudalism to capitalism. It's also the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, technology, science. All of that comes from this new foundation of science and mathematics that Descartes sort of begins with, this philosophical foundation, right? Of I think, therefore I am. That whatever else is out there, my existence has to be the first thing that counts. That has to be there before anything else can exist, right? For my consciousness, right? So once again, you can think of in terms of, well, does the sun really go? Does the sun really go around the Earth, or is that really false, right? Right? Maybe that's false, but my consciousness must exist, right? Then you can sort of logically deduce and calculate, and you realize that, oh, really, the Earth is going around the sun, right? So, um, okay, so we're going to look at the first image here, right? So this is from an earlier file. If you take a look at that, and you should read it, it's interesting. Okay, so I'm going to share this now. Okay. Okay, so this is an image an illustration by Jacques Callot from the 30 Years War. I think they get the, you know, and I'm going to enhance it here. What we see here is a mass hanging in a, it looks like after a battle or something, you know. You see the religious figures here, religious figure here, religious figure here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people being, 6 men being hanged. This one is in the process of being hanged. Here's the hangman. Here's the priest giving him the last rites. This looks like the Catholic Church here. So it looks like the Catholics won this battle. Here's a castle in the back. The sun is coming in, right? You have the masses of the infantry here. You have some officers here. These guys look like the Three Musketeers, right? So this is the period of the 30 Years War and Descartes, right? And um, Descartes' idea that everything that I think, or how many things that I believe that are false, right? So maybe I need to set all those things aside and find out what is really true and then build all my beliefs on that, right? And so his answer to that is, I think, therefore I am, that I must exist. My consciousness must exist before anything else can exist. And so as far as the foundation of critical thinking, what we're talking about here is that in a way this foundation serves still to this day as a as a as a um, as a stopping, you know, to stop us from continuing to be confused as to what exists, what doesn't exist. What can I know? Is COVID real? Right? Is the vaccine real? Will the vaccine um, um, you know, if I take the vaccine, will it implant a chip in me? How do I know? Right? Who do I believe? Right? Do I believe Fox News? Do I believe MSNBC? Do I believe this person, my doctor? Do I believe these guys on the street? Do I believe that drunk guy that's you know, screaming on the streets, right? You know, you start to go crazy when you don't know what to think, right? So this insecurity, right? This lack of a firm foundation of thinking of what exists, right, comes to an end when you say, I think, therefore I am. Even if all that's false, I exist, right? So you can start with the I think, therefore I am, according to Descartes, according really the modern period of modern science, mathematics, philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. So here, I just want to just focus in on the social chaos, the cruelty, you know, the religious sort of hypocrisy, right? So if God is so great, why is this happening? Are they really sinners, right? Obviously, there was some kind of a battle, so there are two sides. I mean, you know, these were probably people that they were prisoners, or you know, maybe they got them on some crimes or something. Um, um, and you know, you also see the question of, well, maybe God is evil, right? Remember that in Descartes where he says that, well, you know, how do I know that mathematics is true if there's a possibility that God is evil and he's created me such that even 2 + 2 = 4, it seems 100% true to me, but in fact, God has created me so that I could be mistaken about that. So what do I really know? Nothing, right? So, and his answer is, even if I know nothing, my existence I must know that I exist, right? You know, and then he goes into meditation 2 with the wax, and that therefore I must exist something like the wax, but not really material. It must be some kind of mental thing, right? That must be there underneath all the different thoughts, right? So, yeah, and so another point here, Jacques Callot, the artist here, you know, this was sort of an early form of photojournalism, right? He actually witnessed some of these scenes and then painted them quickly, did an illustration, then he would do a painting on it. And then as the painting circulated, as the images circulated amongst people, and you know, yes, the upper classes, et cetera, right? So this information then spread around. What's happening, you know, 300 miles away, 500 miles away. If you're in France, what's happening in Belgium? What's happening in England? What's happening in Germany, right? So that the information spreads through images that artists created, right? But it's a much slower process than what we have now. So this is an early form of photojournalism. I'm going to switch to the second image now. All right. Um, um, so this is a similar painting from the same time period. This is Sebastian Vrancx. This painting is also in your scroll if you go back and you look at it. And here we have a picture of civil strife in Northern Europe. I believe this is in Belgium somewhere, or the Netherlands, right? Which would be very close to where Descartes was. Once again, you have the same type of costumes, same type of clothing. Here we're seeing a kind of civil war or some kind of like, you know, violent conflict between the rich and the poor. Here's a rich woman, she's being raped, right? She has an armed guard. They have, you know, property and goods. And then you have these poor farmers attacking them. And we see the social chaos. We see the violence. We see the cruelty, right? This rape, right? Her dress is up. She has a chicken here. So you know, you see the exploitation of the rich and the poor. Um, and once again, if you see, you know, if you look at art, right, you see the background. It's kind of peaceful in the background here with a castle, right? Here's a windmill from the 1600s, informing us that wind power is very old. It's not a new technology, right? And one doubts whether you could generate enough electricity for the modern world with this feudalistic sort of technology, right? You know, we also see in the background here, here's a burning village, here's a church, here's kind of a more church for the rich, maybe. It's more rich and established, right? And over here you see religion for the poor, right? Just a cross, Jesus, right? And out of this, it looks like these are the farmers coming to attack. Here's looks like a farmer slitting the throat of a soldier, right? It looks like the soldiers are, of course, protecting the rich, right? So here we have another picture of the social chaos of Northern Europe, right? So we also learned that Northern Europe was not this great place. There was war, there was poverty, there was killing, there was rape, there was mass murder. And so we also learned that, and we see poverty too. You know, these people are not rich, right? So the idea that Northern Europe, white people always had it so great and they're naturally superior to everybody else. If you actually look at history, you see that the conditions of society were quite bad, right? Nevertheless, you see advancement, right? So on the one hand, what I'm trying to say is that, right, it's not the case that you just have a natural white supremacy of Northern Europe, that they had it bad too, but human beings do make progress through these negative conditions, right? And in one sense, progress, Descartes represents progress, right? I believe that by establishing a philosophical um, um, foundation for thinking, right, replacing the old way of thinking of God, right, you know, allows for modern science to build technology, raise the standard of living, and also there is also a correlation between individual human freedom, human rights too, right? So maybe we'll talk about that later. So this is a second image. And just to wrap up, you know, we talked about the social chaos. We talked about the conditions under which Descartes was sort of compelled to do his philosophical new foundations, right? I think, therefore I am, replacing the idea that God created the world, even though he still maintains that to some extent. Um, um, and also for us, for writing, right, looking and research is inquiry, looking at multimodal sources for information, right? Yes, it does take some, you know, education, knowledge, reading, you know, yes, information is important, right? You know, yes, I've been studying this stuff a long time, but I still learn new stuff as I do this, right? And so I use these images to get a clearer picture myself. Okay. And also with social media, even sharing this now online, right? So I'm using these images to teach this class, to, in a way to produce a discourse, right? Which is a kind of writing itself. All right, so we'll talk more about this later, right? So I'm going to push pause now. I'm going to end this video.